Welcome everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Happy International Women's Day. If you're about to go into it, if you're at the end of your day, I know this is my last event for the day. So, and what a powerhouse panel we've got for you this evening, Amplifying Women's Success. So I'm really lucky to be moderating this panel, and I can't wait to talk to you about what we see of the day, what our thoughts are, and we've got some great questions. So without further ado, I'm going to let my fellow panelists introduce themselves because they're just incredible women. We're going to start with Brigitte. Over to you.
Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here with you celebrating International Women's Day. My name is Brigitte Agama. I live in South Africa, right at the tip of the African continent. I have spent my entire career in human resources in various industries, from higher education, financial services, asset management, hospitality. And for the last while, I've been a CHRO in a number of multinational organizations. And at the moment, I've started my own business, trying my hand as an entrepreneur, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm also a part-time teacher at the University of Witwatersrand Business School. I lecture there on a part-time basis. And then over and above that, I do some public speaking and I do some consulting as well as coaching. Thank you.
Wow, where do you get time to put all that in? That's incredible.
Thank you,
Brigitte. Over to Falaki.
All right, I think Bridget stole my thunder a bit because our professions are actually quite similar. So aside from being a mother to two strong-willed teenagers, well, one is 21 now, and the other one is 19, and also been married to one husband. Somebody laughed when I said that the last time. I am also
one is enough.
totally enough. So I also work full-time as the regional HR director at a global tech company, which is Oracle, one of the best. And so that's my 9 to 5. My 5 to 9 is that I'm a certified executive coach, and I help women in senior level positions get seen and heard. So I really help them to up their confidence and their courage so that they can be more visible in the workplace. And yeah, I do many other things, but that will suffice for now. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you. Matilli, and we need to talk about the time zone that you're in. You need to tell everyone what your commitment was to this panel. You really do.
Yeah. So I have to talk about the time zone. It's good morning to everyone. Happy Women's Day to all of you. But I think I'm already one day past. So it's the next day for me right now. It's 2:30 in the morning, but I cannot wait to see all of you today. To introduce about myself, I've pretty much like the other two panelists in HR for more than a decade. We worked in India and right now working in Sydney. I'm the CHRO and the head strategy for the company called Slow and Build Trailers. Of course, mother and wife, daughter. I'm sure all of you know what that means. It's a lot to carry. And in addition to that, I'm a dancer. I paint, so an artist. And I do a lot of public speaking. And like the others I've mentioned, I think some of the best speakers do want to coach people. So I've done a couple of certifications in psychology and in coaching. So it's about helping women. It's about helping people in need and try and see how we can grow together. So I think that's more about the passion and what I do as a profession. Thank you and happy Women's Day, everyone, again.
Thank you so much, Matilli. And over to you, Smitty.
Hi, everyone. And from me as well, a very happy Women's Day to everyone. And I think we're going to talk about Women's Day too today. My name is Smriti, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Advantage Club, which is an HR tech venture. From background, I have done my master's from UCLA, post which I've worked with Microsoft for a couple of years in their Redmond office. before I started off Advantage Club as my own venture. We're in HR tech. We help enable organizations drive different employee engagement, diversity, inclusion programs to overall retain and reduce attrition. I typically am a technology person by education. So I started off as a developer. I eventually moved into management, customer success. So I've seen different variations of women in different departments as well. And overall, I envision driving empowerment even in the venture building space, where more and more women should be encouraged in getting into entrepreneurship. I'm part of a lot of entrepreneurship cells in a lot of colleges. I'm based out of India, by the way. So that's pretty much about me. And I'm really, really excited to be here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Very brief introduction on myself. I'm Emma Davis. I'm the Chief People and Culture Excellence Officer. That's a title that doesn't fit on a card, and came up with it myself. So own fault. I work for Masafi Water. I'm based in the United Arab Emirates. I've been here for 15 years. I'm the founder of the Evolve People Network, which is the largest people network in the UAE. We have come together to challenge people and culture and say, how can we do it and how can we do it better? So I'm so excited to be moderating this panel tonight on this day. And I think we should talk about the day. So it's International Women's Day. I've seen every end of posting today. I've seen companies posting about their women and how amazing they are. And I've seen other people saying, please don't post about Women's Day. I've even seen a man posting, you shouldn't be talking about this. I've seen people say, don't give me cupcakes. I've seen it all. Tell me what you think really of International Women's Day. And anybody, I'm not going to highlight you, give it and you give it. You're all muted, so you'll need to unmute. I don't know how to do that.
Maybe I'll start. So I think it's a pity that we still need an International Women's Day because it speaks to the fact that we haven't reached parity yet. I do still think it's necessary. I do still think it's very important to highlight the journey that we're on towards equality. I'm very fortunate in a way also because, in South Africa, we celebrate International Women's Day on the 8th of March, but we also have a South African Women's Day on the 9th of August. And I just want to share a little bit about that day because it is extremely significant to us and very, very meaningful because it has a very specific history. So many of you will know that, South Africa used to be an apartheid country with terrible laws and a lot of segregation and a lot of oppression of people of color, Black people. In 1956, a group of multiracial women, white women, Black women, all kinds of women, got together and actually led a march to the Union Building. So the Union Building is our equivalent of the White House. It's where the president sort of works every day. They led a march. They led 20,000 women to that building, and they were marching against the fact that in South Africa, Black people had to carry a document which we called a pass. So they couldn't move freely in the country. So they had to carry a document, a kind of permit in order to go to work, for instance, etc. So, that was a very, very significant moment for us as a country because all these women got together and just realized that what was happening was completely unacceptable and wrong and felt that they needed to do something about it. So I thought I'd just share that little story about South Africa and its history and why we have a special Women's Day on the 9th of August as well. And just also highlighting the impact that women can have on society. And here we have an actual historical example. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. That's fantastic. And that's a great piece of history that people need reminding of. Anyone else?
Yeah, so thanks, Bridget, for that beautiful story. telling us we still need the Women's Day to talk about the disparities that we're still living in. To me, I am on the other side of the spectrum, I believe. I think that the more we just going to kind of have these Women's Day, I think it's going to emphasize the fact that we are still not there. And we need to just try and be there and stop pretending that we are still not there. So it is like this. You would never see a monastery or a group of monks celebrating a yoga day because they do it every day. And I think that's what we all should start doing, that we should actually empower ourselves. And of course, the ecosystem should also be enabling us. But what's the most important thing is it all starts within us. And we should start feeling that every day is Women's Day, to come together and speak what we want to speak and feel so special about ourselves, our contribution to the family as well as for the professional life, and enable the ecosystem as well. If you just wait for the ecosystem to happen, like Bridget mentioned, if they would have just waited for people to have that revealing moment to say it's strong to carry a paper, I don't think it would have ever happened. I think the best moments in the history happened when we realized it, there's a need to change. And then it started within us, and then we come in group and do it. So I'm a strong advocate of that. So I feel I think this is what we do every day. This is how we should feel every day. And we should have pancakes and cupcakes every day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Smriti?
Yeah, I strongly agree with the pancakes and cupcakes every day bit, but jokes apart. So I have a two-pronged view to this. One is the ideological thought process around it, and the second is the reality of the world we're living in, right? So the ideology is what we all feel, and probably most of the women today who have achieved something in their careers feel that why are we still celebrating this day? I mean, we're far off better than that where we were, and creating this day and celebrating this day also isolates us as a separate gender group, which also indirectly puts more power in, maybe the men's hands, right? So you're kind of indirectly saying that, okay, we are inferior, and hence we need this day to make us feel better about ourselves on this day. But then there's also the reality of the situation. And I always think of this from like a, ancient anthropological view. Think about it. If your great-great-great-grandmother knew that today women are working, women are not confined to the kitchen anymore, they're not just, they're taking care of children, they're doing it all, she would have flipped out. She probably would have turned in her grave and she'd be like, that's not possible, you're kidding, this is not possible to do. So we as, women as a gender itself have come so long in terms of generations itself. But at the same time, the reality is that while maybe half of us or less than half of us have moved to that additional step, still around 50 to 80% of women in the world are still oppressed. They're still going through that transformational cycle. So till the time we completely complete that transformational cycle, we need to continue having initiatives, days like these, which will help us, we are already in some level empowered, but also help empower the ones who are still oppressed. So I have like a two-pronged view towards this.
Thank you. That's a really interesting view. Thank you. Falaki, over to you. Your views on Women's Day.
Emma, the last speakers have actually spoken my mind, but I must admit to you, we're certainly not there yet, just to put it very succinctly. There is still no equality. There is still no equity. I believe we have made great strides, but we are so far from where we really need to be. And despite the fact that we are celebrating, and honestly, I have had some cappuccino cupcakes today. Please don't ask me what they put in it, and I have had, and I have had some really some really delicious finger munchies today. The fact remains that it is still a day of sobriety. It is still a day that calls for a lot of reflection. And until a man in, e.g., my world of corporate, or until a man who calls himself a leader also adds feminist, women's advocate, women's coach, women's mentor, women's sponsor to his or her I beg your pardon, to his accolade, you know,
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
then we can even start to say, okay, perhaps we're getting somewhere, you
I
know.
agree.
But at the moment, as long as we continue to raise one another up, it is a good place to start. And by the way, Emma, it should be a public holiday, not just a day.
We talked about this earlier, didn't we?
Yes.
We talked about this. So some of the things I've seen today is I've seen some women, some businesses posting, our businesses have given the day off to go and do what we want to do, celebrate ourselves. What was really interesting was a lot of, one person said, I've been given the day off to look after my children. That's not getting it, is it? That's not getting International Women's Day. But also, I just think that until people are actually talking about this properly, and I think there's been this bit of backlash because something about the hugging themselves photo, all of that's gone on. I think that what we need to recognize is that a lot of the time it's not the men also who are dragging us down. There's a lot of women who we need to empower one another. We need to celebrate our successes together. When we post things about incompetent men in leadership, posts on LinkedIn, we haven't done this, but I've seen it this week and I've gone, hang on a second, there's incompetent people in leadership roles. Let's not just put it in against one gender, but there is so much work to be done. And it's, if we're reposting things and putting it on LinkedIn and saying things like, oh yeah, this company's amazing, but there's no gender pay equity, we're just empowering them to behave that way. We're just saying, go ahead, keep doing it. Keep not paying us quite as much. So absolutely. So thank you. I really appreciate all your views on that. It's really important that we share that. So on to our questions. I'd like to ask you what you think about the biggest challenges women actually face in their careers today, because they have changed. Now they have changed. We talked about our grandmothers and our great grandmothers earlier and the history. Challenge, you know, there's different challenges these days. So can you share with me some of those challenges that you think that we're facing at the moment?
So I can take that.
Start. Okay.
Sure. No, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, please go.
I can start, Emma. You know what? There are loads of challenges. I didn't even know where to start. I had like a long list of stuff and I just said, I'd let Emma choose, you know, and then I'd talk about it, you know, but let me just cite a few. Unconscious bias is definitely one, you know, where you see a woman and immediately you think something else, or you think a lack of something, as opposed to, hey, data out there is showing that women actually belong on the table. Women can actually contribute, you know. I mean, let's even start to talk about the lack of confidence and the lack of courage that women actually, you know, harbor, but because they're not in enabling environments that is even raising them or pushing them forward, that's how, I mean, those are definitely things to cite. A lack of representation even at the top, because guess what? It is women that most of the time fight for women. Thankful for the men who support women, like my husband, you know, he has 3 women around him, he has no choice, right? But the thing about it is, if we had more women in leadership to also speak for others, then we would really be talking about, okay, these are the challenges. However, how do we then, you know, begin to solve them? So, I mean, the challenges are many, but thankfully, there are those of us who are here lending our voice, creating the awareness, asking for change, you know, in fact, being the change at the end of the day. Because if we are here, you know, enabling GSDC and the audience here, we are being the change. And yeah, so those are a few of the challenges that I'll cite. Was there a second part to your question, or have I answered it, Emma?
No, you've answered it. That's fabulous. Thank you so much. Smithy, over to you.
Yeah, so my first point was the same as Falaki's, which was around gender stereotyping and discrimination. Like she said, you know, men are perceived to be better in certain roles and certain work areas, or maybe there are lack of opportunities for women in those areas. For example, in technology, right, you find lesser and lesser number of women who are in engineering. And hence you have that stereotyping that women can't code, right? Or men are better coders, or men are better developers than women. Similarly, in industries, you see industries like manufacturing, you see other industries which are more labor intensive. And gone are the days when, people used to do manual labor. We have machines now, but still that stereotyping is still there, that manufacturing is a man's domain. So, you see like barely any percentage of diversity in those industries. So that's the first one. Second is, and somebody mentioned it on the chat, talking about single mothers and all of that. So the second point resonates with that when you have a challenge of balancing work and family obligations. So women in most countries and cultures are still perceived to be the home managers, whereas men are still perceived to be the bread earners. Now, again, times have changed today where both partners work equally, but the mentality has not changed today when, a career-oriented woman is often accused of being a bad wife or a bad mother, or, you're doing a job, but you're not good at managing home, whereas men are easily allowed to get away with it under the pretext of working so hard at their jobs, right? So that's the second major challenge, according to me. And third is pay disparity. Now, pay disparity is something which is reducing visibly, especially if you go to like enterprises and the ITs and the finances of the world. But still, in a lot of areas, women are still paid lesser than men for doing the exact same job. Now, even if base pay is considered to be the same, in certain industries, when you're promoting people, then, those industries tend to make those parities in promotions under the pretext of performance, or, she's a mother, so she has family commitments, a man might be able to put more work in. So all of those things also eventually add to an indirect pay disparity, which is not really visible on paper, but there are different ways of like running around the bush and causing those.
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I remember this. I was actually once called power crazy because it's taken me a while to work this out. I was actually ambitious. This is like 20 years ago or something. And the statement was, she's power crazy. No, I was just ambitious and I knew what I wanted. So, and that term's still around, but you know what? Also, nobody ever says to my husband, how do you manage your work-life balance? No one ever says that. And the caregiver statement. Oh yes, we're caregivers. My children grew up on toast because I was ambitious, but they're okay, they're doing fine. So Brigitte, have you got any other comments to add to that?
Yeah, I think it was fantastically said by both Philoki and Smriti. I would just add some of the examples because I spent most of my life working for manufacturing. Everything that you guys spoke, I know exactly how it works. And specifically to talk about is so I'll just take an example and explain the fact about the stereotyping between men and women. We used to have interviews, and as long as they see the name of the woman, and whether it's an internal or external recruitment for a job, if she is being extremely towards a job, a career-oriented person, the comment that you generally get is the person is very aggressive. And if you see the same thing with the men, it said it's very assertive. It's the same, context, but perceived very differently. So what we used to do is like we masked the person's name and the identity, and we used to just take the interviews, and the results used to be very different. Now, doing it in the manufacturing sector, just the way Smriti mentioned, a lot of them say she's a woman, she can't work in manufacturing because it's going to be in shifts, she can't come and work. One, she's going to get married and go one day. So she's not going to be the part of the job, she's going to become a mother. So she can't continue working and put as much as a man can do. And it's everyday's job for us to make them understand it doesn't work like that. It's not women who just become mother, it's also men who become father. It's not just about us to say that you are the person who needs to carry the family within his shoulders. As much as we do, the men also have the responsibility, but society doesn't view like that. And I just absolutely agree with both of them. And it's just going to take a lot of time in certain industries to get where we want to get, because there's so many skewed, tabooized perceptions about women in workplace. right? The second thing to connect with what we spoke is, I think, the glass ceiling. Some of the part where you just work in industries where it's men dominated, women also feel complacent after a time. They feel that I'm just going to support my family with the earnings that I've got, and I'm happy with what I'm doing. So beyond a point, they hit this glass ceiling, and I have seen personally so many women who are exceptionally good, but they just feel this is not a place where I would be welcomed, but I'm just earning to just support my family, and I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I am not going to take the battle. And I think as the HR of such a kind of a place and being the talent manager, we had to start a lot of initiatives to tell women, you don't have to do what you're doing. You need to break your glass ceiling and come out and set example for others. About talking about the leadership hierarchy in a lot of industries, when you look at the base of the entry point of the job roles, you will have a lot of women pumping in. Like we would have recruitment having the targets to have so many women and diversity ratios. And then you would see as you grow up, like Faloke mentioned, there's no women leadership. Where do all these women go? What happens to them? Either they hit the glass ceilings, they're complacent in terms of what they're doing and get stuck in the hierarchy of the roles, or they just leave because they feel it's not worth the fight to just be in the man's environment and work for it. I have been myself being a woman. When I just entered the site, I was probably the only woman to sit in a room of 50 men leaders, and people used to just feel, I'm not going to talk to her. And from that place to earn a place in the table, to have a voice, it's a big fight. And that's what we're talking about. So those are the real challenges today, because I think it's not just a conversation is about no longer women coming to work. I think it's a conversation about how do we make them survive to their fullest potential, and can make them do what they really can do. I think that's what it is, the problems that I see. And I totally agree with both the speakers, what they said. And I've seen it myself. Nice.
Thank you. Over to you, Brigitte.
I think I agree with all the ladies. I think I especially agree with Falaki. I think representation matters, you know, that expression. I think it's very, very important. What I observe is that with the lack of adequate representation of women in the C-suite, you have a culture that develops, you know, around male practices and male interests and male needs. I mean, the classic example, for instance, that is unfortunately quite prevalent here in South Africa, is that a lot of alignment, a lot of discussion happens on the golf course. By the time they get to the office and you in the meeting, everybody's aligned. You're the only one that's not aligned, you know, because you don't have an interest in golf. In financial services, similarly, a lot of the people enjoy cycling. So they'll go out as a group and cycle together, and afterwards just go to a coffee shop and have a conversation about projects, about budgets, all sorts of things get discussed. And if you're not interested in cycling, you're out of the loop, you know, and you also don't have that opportunity to build your social capital the way they do it, you know, because it's
like the old smoking areas, isn't it? Yes, I know people used to say to me, you don't smoke, and if you were out there in the smoking shed, you would know what was going on.
Exactly.
That shouldn't be a thing. I shouldn't be ruining my health to find out what's going on. But at least I suppose the men are playing golf and cycling. Fabulous, thank you. So there's some of the challenges. So let's talk about what organizations can do. Because I want to put a positive spin on this, because you know what? We're actually pretty brilliant as humans go. So we've looked at our challenges. How can organizations help women by creating a more inclusive and supportive culture? Give me just a few simple things that can be done.
So I'm just going to go first on that. I think I did speak about one of the things that we did with the recruitment, that we just kind of masked the person identity to take interviews, specifically internal interviews, because the moment you say that name, they have 100 reasons to say why women can't be in the position. So we just did that, and it worked brilliantly well. And then also it's about not just doing certain process changes, it's about creating a culture. So it's all about working with people who are in the change journey. Some of them would be, they are good and they are pro-women. They just want to make a change. So they are change agents. Work with your change agents, inspire through them. Because as HR and even so women, you go and speak about the women and what they can do, I think it's just never going to sail. So what we try and do is like, we just identify these influencers and then we work with them to change small things every day. How do you include them and give them those tough jobs that you think they can't do? Set an example, speak about the success stories with others, make them speak about the success stories with others. That's how you make change, because that's when people change. The third thing that we did was work with the leadership. As everybody mentioned, you need to have a say in the leadership, or the leadership should really speak that as an agenda. It's not about having your KPIs. It's not about celebrating the Women's Day in the best possible way for one day a year and forget about it. It's about leadership doing it every single day and truly see the opportunity to enable women in every way possible. When that becomes an agenda for the top leadership to speak about it and walk the talk, things start changing. And I think these are the three things that I would want to probably start with, and I'm sure there's more. Yeah.
You are so right. We don't want to be a quota, and we don't want to be a picture for social media. Absolutely. Falaki.
Emma, the culture of an environment is as good as its leadership behavior. We can list 1,001 programs here, but the fact is this: leadership needs to walk the talk. Because guess what? Everybody can tell the difference, whether this is just a tick in the box, the formal mentoring program, the internship program that gives 50-50, the sponsorship programs at the top, the leadership, for women and all the conferences and blah, blah, blah. People can tell the difference as to whether this is just on the agenda for the box to be ticked, or are you walking the talk? When you start to reward great behavior towards women and you start to consequence manage bad behavior, especially, when a manager, for example, runs his or her mouth against a woman, discriminatorily, of course we are, and nothing is done about it, you are speaking. When something is done about it, you are speaking, and that is what informs the culture. So enough of the programs, enough of the initiatives. It's time for leadership to walk the talk. Start putting it in managers' KPIs. You cannot just hire people that are from the same area as you. You need to have a diverse team. You cannot be promoted until you are formally mentoring a woman, and so on and so forth. It is
great ideas. I love that.
The talk.
You're so right. And it's when you hear that conversation and you hear the four guys going, should we go and play paddle? Should we go and play that? And the woman in the team isn't invited. It's like, hang on, that's not okay. And it's calling out that behavior, isn't it? It's really about saying, do you know what, that's not okay. Fabulous. I love those ideas for KPIs. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Brigitte?
I'm a big fan of Carla Harris, and I often watch her TED Talks. She's got her own YouTube channel now. She's the great. She's the vice chairman of wealth management in Morgan Stanley. She's also a managing director in that space. And she's in case you don't know, she's a Black woman, and she credits a lot of her success to a strategy that she used around sponsorship. She is a very, very intelligent woman, and she realized after 3 years in Morgan Stanley, she realized that actually what you need is an advocate within the business, somebody with influence, somebody who can advocate for you when you're not in the room. And so she speaks a lot about the strategies that you can employ to get a sponsor and how that can help you, reach your goals. And two things that she mentions are absolutely crucial. One is what she calls performance capital. So you as a person, you've got to not only perform, you've got to do a little bit more. That's one way in which you can stand out. And the other thing is your social capital. You've got to work on those relationships. Your sponsor can't speak up for you when you're not in the room if they don't have access to what you've achieved, what you've done, your work, your contributions. So I'm a big fan of sponsorship, and I was very lucky that very early in my career, I used to work at a university in Cape Town, at the University of Cape Town. At one stage, the university was restructuring its HR division. And I didn't know this until somebody told me, like years afterwards, but there was a conversation with all the deans in the room about this restructure. And one of the deans that was my client, he said, you can do what you want, just don't touch my CHRO, don't go there. So he was advocating. He was
your advocate.
Yeah, I didn't even know it at the time, but I mean, it just speaks to the importance of having a sponsor and cultivating those relationships.
And you are so right. And I think that sometimes we forget that. We're very good at social networking outside of our businesses, but we forget the inside, and we forget that I call them my culture connectors internally, so that I know who I need for certain things. And having that advocate in the room when you're not there is critical. That is something that we all need to be looking at, and how we do and how we make sure that happens. Smitty?
Yeah, so I think everyone covered most of my pointers, but I just have 3 more. First is when we say diversity from an organization's perspective, we talk about diversity of the organization as a whole. We need to start tackling diversity from a department level itself, right? So if you're saying that, oh, I have 30% of women in my workplace, are all those 30% in women perceived roles? Are they in, roles like sales or even HR, right? It's a strong woman oriented area, but do we even have women in areas like technology? So if you're actually creating diversity from a business unit point of view, I think that should be a better mandate than following a general diversity mandate, and that aligns the leadership and the entire leadership to actually drive real diversity. Second is what the organization can do to further empower women. Now, we all talk about challenging the status quo and making society believe that managing the home is both a man and a woman's job. But this kind of societal transformation does not happen overnight. Hence, companies need to be patient, and they need to understand and support their women employees in this transformative society. So can you provide things like flexible working hours for women who are struggling to manage their work and family responsibilities? Are you open to providing things like period leaves? Are you doing inclusivity for transgenders? Are you really supporting women not only on maternal leaves, but also paternal leaves, because that's how they will get free, right? So those kind of initiatives will also help in supporting women employees and organizations better. Thirdly, and I think everyone touched upon mentorship, and I'm a true believer of that, because what mentorship does, especially from older women or more experienced women or women in leaderships to women who are just starting off their careers, is give them a clear roadmap on how do you get where you want to get. And why should women be the only one giving those mentorships? If you don't have enough women leaders, have men do that. So if you're able to drive those programs where through peer groups or support groups, you're able to answer those questions for women who've just started up their careers from both men and women, that will also help eventually remove that diverse culture, or have that parity among men and women in the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that half of my HR team is actually male. So I can, and it is about measurement of those numbers across teams. I know we were doing our KPIs in our business recently, and there actually nobody at the beginning, when they first said, nobody had a people KPI. And I said, well, there's no point in any of your KPIs, because if your managers are firing people, you're not going to be and having a high attrition rate. You're not actually going to be making any of your KPIs. And it was like one of those, oh, yes, moments. But we've included diversity. We've included those things because actually, and nationality, because otherwise you create mini cultures. And we talked about that, which would be hiring from your own area. So I think those things, I think if companies are starting to measure and look at those things, I think it's critical. I agree with you. The one thing I'd say on flexi working is it's not just for women, because actually when my husband looks after his children, he's not babysitting, they are his children. And it's they're a bit old, to be honest, when I talk about that, when I say that. And my husband's be going like, our kids are really old. Why are you talking about raising? But you know, it's flexi working for any parent, but also not just for parents, because what about those people who don't have children for whichever reason, but want to work from a different location? They want to work because they want silence. They want to work because you've put them in an open plan office and they might be neurodiverse. So all those things, I think we've got to look at. There's a big picture out there, but there's some fantastic ideas. Thank you so much. So let's talk about our male allies. And like he said it, she's got a husband who's got 3 women at home, who has to be an ally, who is powering on every day. And look, a lot of women are lucky enough to have those allies. So yep, very supportive husband, very supportive family. How do we get our fellow leaders to play an active part in empowering women, other than doing things like mentorship and being our advocates? How do we get them to see that we're not just saying this because we feel like we should, we're saying this because of the value we add to their businesses? Who's going to go? Lucky, I bet you've got some great wisdom for me here.
I was actually just going to try and steal from somebody else as they spoke, Emma. I like how you ask, how do you get them? I think for one thing, and I think what has helped me in the past is to, first of all, even be ready to listen to the men, because sometimes, and that's putting yourself in a position to be a very close ally, and therefore make them allies as well. So there's a space for allyship here, where just so that if you invite them into your space to be able to give you that feedback, where you're not necessarily responding with emotion, but you're responding with emotion and wisdom and wanting to move forward and saying that you appreciate what it is that they are bringing to the table for you, then they get drawn in more and more. Because there are times, frankly, and it's a direct report of mine, a male, who said this to me, like, well, but you never invite us, but you never ask us to, but women's forum are just about women. And of course, I asked him very quickly, but you never asked to be part of it as well. So I just thought, okay, well, that's something to think about. So, you know, let's invite them. They may just not, who knows?
Yeah.
Whether they are just, you know, just making an excuse, invite them into that place, make them allies, and therefore be open to the feedback that.
Oh, I think we've lost Lucky. I think we've got a bit of a, I think I've still got everybody else. I can still see everybody else moving. Just on that comment, invite them in. Today we held a stress management session around neurodiversity, and when I walked into the room it was full of women because it was Women's Day, and all the men were still sat at their desks, and I was like, hey, you come on, we're all going to understand about stress. We are inclusive as a business. I am not putting events on for one gender. And everyone was like, oh, we thought that's what it was. So you're so right about inviting them, helping them understand. It's so true. Smitty.
Yeah, I just want to add on to Falaki's point, and this is exactly what I had in mind as well. And most men will actually laugh this off, right? But if they truly, really want to work on women empowerment, they first need to listen to women experiences at work, you know, firsthand, and actually learn about the obstacles they face. The first thing that feedback does is it makes them acknowledge that there are biases, there are privileges for men. Yes, you are a privileged gender today. Intentionally or unintentionally, you might not be doing it, you know, on your own. Like, for example, as a female founder, I have seen a dearth of women running ventures. Only 20 to 40% of businesses in different parts of the world are actually run by women. And only 2 to 3% of women run businesses actually get funded. So even in the workplace, like women are stereotyped on the fact that they will eventually stop working and all that. So who are these? Why are the men getting more into ventures? Why are they getting funded more? What is that additional knowledge that they have? So if men who are actually doing better are able to come to these forums, impart their knowledges, and we shouldn't just invite women as speakers, we should also invite them, help share their experiences. And that's what I just wanted to add on to Fulake's point, that let's make it an inclusive thing for them as well. And maybe one day they will fight for, celebrating Men's Day, like we all celebrate Women's Day today. So let's make them feel left out,
Absolutely. Well, I'm just going to note something from the chat box here. Daniel's online. Daniel said, please bring men into your quadrant to exchange values and discuss. He'd like to do that. So thank you, Daniel. I hope you go into your office tomorrow or wherever you're remote working, whatever, and tell everyone and say, let me be a part of this. Thank you. Brigitte?
I absolutely agree with the ladies. I think, the fight for equality for women is not a fight against men. So I absolutely agree that we should use them as allies, and there are men definitely that are willing to be our allies. I remember a very beautiful story from a few months ago. So Serena Williams is married to the founder of Reddit, the social media app. And a few months ago, he actually stepped down from the board of directors of Reddit. The reason he gave, he said, I'm stepping down because I want to make place for diversity. I want you to replace me with somebody who doesn't look like you, is from a diverse background. And, for men to have that kind of confidence to do something like that, because if you look at his career since then, he's gone on to other successful ventures. He's in the venture capital space. He seems to be doing amazing things there. So having the confidence to say, what, let me make room. I'll go on to greater, more interesting things. I think that's also absolutely amazing. And there are men who are allies who do something like that.
Yeah, I don't think this is about sharing up the pie. It's not a pie. There's not, if I take more pie, then you can have less pie. Yeah. This is about equity. So I think that's the difference, isn't it? That we're not saying, hang on, give us some of yours. That's not actually what we want. I work in a 50-50 leadership team, 50 male, 50 women, and the men in the team are my biggest allies. I mean, the CFO is a female, and she's my best friend at work, as the Gallup strength says. But the men are my biggest allies. They are. They believe in my competence. They believe in me, and they use me and use my skills. So I don't think it's about men bashing. I think you've really got it there, Bridget. It's not. We're not saying that. It's about everybody coming together. Tilly, would you like to comment on this before I move to my last question? Because we're running out of time. Can you believe that?
Absolutely. I think I agree with everybody. All the speakers, I think they put it beautifully well. I'll just add two more perspectives to what they have mentioned. So the first thing that I wanted to speak about is choose right. When we're choosing men allies, I think it's important that we choose the right set of people to come and speak. I have had, instances where we've chosen the wrong person to come and speak in the room, and it was a fiasco. So I think it's important as the torchbearers of creating this culture, of creating an inclusive space for men and women to talk about diversity and inclusion. It's important that we choose right to start with. Not saying that you should not be including everyone, but when you're going to have the change agent stand there and speak for you, you need to have the right person speaking the right thing, and then it just follows. You don't want to start something with a bad note or somebody who just even don't understand what an inclusion agenda is, right? So that's the first point. The second point that I want to add to talk about is choose for the right cause, right? When we start working on different issues with women, if we're going to speak about women can have it all, I don't think that's a space where we can just have men to start with, but probably the space where we need to give them a good workplace to work. That's where we start. I'll give an example. When we had to have the harassment committee, the POSH committee, we were looking for a lawyer because that's what the rule is, right? And it was so happened that in the geographic location, we couldn't have a women lawyer. And you won't believe, we were just looking for a women lawyer. And then it was an aha moment to say, you can have a men lawyer to be a part of the group. And that person did a fantastic job throughout the year in terms of doing the right thing. And that's why you create success stories. And then you start talking about it. Choose for the right cause, and choose the right men. I think is how you create powerful allies for your agenda. And then it just, once it starts, it's a dominoes effect and it works beautifully well. That's so true. Thank you so much. So the final closing question, we're going back in alphabetical order again. So if you had to give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? And we'll start with you, Brigitte.
I think I would say to my younger self that all things are possible, and to have the confidence. And that story about the wolf. The wolf that grows is actually the wolf that you feed. So what you feed is what will grow for you. So being selective about where you spend your energies, where you spend your time. I would say to myself that it's an interesting and amazing and spectacular world, and to be open to all possibilities and all opportunities in life. And one of the things that I personally learned over time is that, I find that life it goes like this. If I could plot life on a graph, I would plot it like this.
Yes, it does. It really does.
Yeah, because there are sort of like peaks and there are dips. Yeah. And that it's absolutely fine as long as the trajectory is in the right direction. It's absolutely fine. So sometimes you will find yourself slightly behind your peers, and other times you will be ahead of your peers. When you fall a little bit behind, don't lose hope, because you will catch up, and in some instances you will also pass them. And so yeah, I would say
that's beautiful.
Be less anxious, because it's all going to be okay. It will all work out.
I love that. I love that. That's great. Thank you. It's all going to work out. Falaki, over to you.
You asked for one thing, Emma, and Bridget gave you like 20. So I'm going to give you like 30.
Good. That's good. We're good.
I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But, I wrote a few things. I wish that someone had said this to my younger self at the time. So I'm just saying it very, very clearly off the cuff. It doesn't need to be perfect. Start somewhere. Just go for it. Build.
Yes. Oh, I think we've lost Falaki again. So I think it's I hope is it mine or is
I cannot overemphasize this. Falaki.
Falaki, I think you're going to have to pop it in some notes for us. What you just said. We lost you, and it sounded like such a good story. You were just going into
Emma,
it. Can you hear me? No, we can't. We keep losing you. I think we've lost her. Well, we'll move on. Mitali, go on. Tell me what you would have said.
Like Falaki said, I think if somebody told me this when I was young, I think it would have helped a lot. But what a lot of people said was more than what I can do, what I can't. You can't be a mother and you can't be having a successful professional life. Even people tell me you can't be a mother, you can't be a teacher, you can't be a coach, and you can't be the CHR of an organization. So I've heard a lot of can't. So I would probably say, if anybody comes and tells you, you can't, ask if you can't, who can? I think that's the first thing that I would just tell to myself. Yeah. Every time you're just going to listen to, you can't, just say if you can't, who can do it? The second thing is that I think women has this inherent capability of looking at challenges as opportunities. It's a gift. We all have that gift. And I think over the journey, sometimes we lose track of it. So I turn to myself, remind myself that every time you're stuck with a challenge, you're stuck in front of a wall, see what's the opportunity. Break the wall and go beyond and see what you can do. Never get limited by what you see. And the last thing I would probably tell to myself is continue to do what you're doing. You don't have to be excellent, and you don't have to wait for the excellence to come, and just start. Everything will fall in place if you have the grit to travel and then finish it. And women can have it all if you know how to prioritize and what we truly need, and not the best definition of what women is, but it's just so unique to ourselves. That's what I think I would tell to myself.
Thank you so much. Lucky, you're back. Are you here with us?
I don't know.
Can you finish that for me? Because it was so passionate. We were there.
Technology, I apologize today. I don't know what's going on, but we shall overcome. And Bridget knows what I'm talking about when I say load shedding, but let's not go there.
It's load shedding, isn't it? I did wonder whether we had some load shedding going on.
Yes. Where did I lose you, Emma? You want me to start from the beginning?
Start from the beginning, because it was so good. Start again.
So let me just start with this. To my younger self, keep a brag book from the very beginning. A lot of the results and the accomplishments, you will always refer to it, especially when those voices tell you that you can't. Open your brag book and say, I did this, I can. Raise your hand. Raise your hand and do the things that no one else wants to, because that's what's going to get you noticed. Surround yourself with people that actually enable you and pull you up and build your confidence. Don't spend too much time on social media. It's not real. Spend your time actually investing. Spend your time investing in
Oh, I think we lost again. Oh, we're getting snippets. It's so sad. Are we back?
Maybe she can type the rest of it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll have to have the rest of it in the chat.
Sharing some good stuff.
Yeah, Schmitty, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and it's interesting again, Fulaki mentioned.
And you know what? You can do this. Trouble, wipe those.
No, we lost her again.
No, we've lost her. Go on, Schmitty, you go ahead.
Got it. So I love what Fulaki said, that you should, write it down, what you want to do.
I love that.
And ironically, I have been writing stuff down since 16 years. So when you said that question, all that just kind of, and I keep reading it, over time, that, okay, what did I think in 2007? What was I thinking in 2008? So I think I used to bother a lot about what other people used to think of me, right? I was a very competitive person. I still am, but I was way more competitive and way more anxious about the future back then. So I always wanted to be a people pleaser, maybe. And that's what I would tell my younger self. Firstly, that you cannot make everyone happy. So I would advise myself to always look out for my interests first. Yes. And not do something just because somebody else has told me to do it, or because that's just how the world works, right? Secondly, I would tell myself to be more confident and more and bring in more self-love. I know what I'm capable of, and honestly, I had no idea back then. So that's something which is the second thing I tell myself. And lastly, I would tell myself to not run away or avoid conflicts and embrace them. I would advise myself to be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's how you grow and you learn in life. So I think these are the 3 pieces of advice I would give to my younger self.
I love them. Half of them I'm going to do now. I just think that's brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic. So thank you all. Thank you for taking time out of your day, your evening, and your middle of the night, for coming to talk to us today and sharing your knowledge and your incredible knowledge and some of the incredible things that you've done and advice with everyone. Now, there haven't actually been any questions. There's been some comments, so I'm going to share them with you. So I think somebody said educating men on the importance is great. Over preparation is an enemy of success. You'll be pleased to know that I really use that one a lot. I don't really prepare. Spend time, cut down on social media. If you saw on my LinkedIn, I came off social media 3 months ago. 3 months in, feel like a different human. So yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Somebody just put their hand up to ask a question. I don't know how to make that work. If you wouldn't mind popping your question in the chat box, and then I can pick up on it for you. But I think we had some really, really fantastic information shared this evening. So thank you all. Let me see, somebody's just said thank you all, you amazing women. That's lovely. I'm just writing all these comments. Help with technology, because I don't know how to let people in if they're putting their hands up and asking for to ask questions. Nope. Okay.
Emma, what are you trying to do?
Here, you're here. Yes. You're back. Somebody had put their hand up to ask a question, but I've asked them to pop it in the chat box. But they haven't. But everybody is saying thank you. Flacky, everybody loves your sense of humor. This is amazing. Here we go at the bottom, right? Okay. So everybody is saying thank you so much. Great inspiration. Thank you. Very insightful. So I think that was a success. I think that was a brilliant way to end International Women's Day. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful evening, morning, day, and I look forward to connecting with you all really, really soon. You have a fantastic evening, everyone.
Thank you, ladies. It was brilliant spending International Women's Day in your company. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Waiting till 4 o'clock in the morning. So again, happy Women's Day, everyone.
I hope your conference goes well. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Emma.